The genesis of this layout started about 12 months ago when Budget Model Railways did their shelf challenge. Basically, can you build a layout on a shelf of about 20 centimetres by about a metre? And that got me thinking, could I? And in short, yes I can. I've done a 001 of these and really enjoyed it, but I do not have a layout that's roundy. I saw this at the NEC and I was like, oh, I want a roundy. I've got nowhere for my 009 stuff to run. Maybe I could build one on one of the Budget Model Railways like shelf challenges. So that was my plan. I bought a shelf baseboard and some foam board for the back scenes, put them together. I used some Pico track and lots of swearing to bend the track into place like this with a little siding. You can see here I'm beginning to just build up a little bit of the hillside back scene. I've got 2 tunnel mouths at different angles of different sizes, purely to make them more interesting and to make the layout seem bigger. It was then covered in this coconut hair. I thought it looked sick, and then I looked at it the day after and didn't like it, so tore about 70% of it away to be replaced with this Woodland Scenics autumnal shrubbery pack. I don't know, 3 or 4 different tones in there. I quite liked it. At this time also the track was weathered, just picking out some of the sleepers in different colours. It was all then ballasted using aquarium sand, nice, cheap, nice and simple. I then weathered the track down using a spray paint and then a bit of sandpaper over the top of the rails. Perfect. It just sort of helps the vibe for this layout is that it's old, decaying, not had any money put into the infrastructure of it for a long time. Obviously various details have been added in at different points. I'll come on to those in a little bit. But yeah, this is the layout as it was. This is the box the layout lives in, and this is the layout itself. Now, the backstory behind this layout is that this is a permanent way sizing for the Mid-Potteries Light Railway, inspired by the Reverend Audrey's Mid-Sodal Light Railway. Inside a cutting, somewhere along the line, the Mid-Potteries Railway never makes any money, starts in the late 1800s, dies out by the late 1920s, early 1930s. This layout represents the railway at some point between the late 1800s and the 1920s. So, let's get into what the layout's actually got going for it. Because this is literally just a rounding with one siding, which is a bit of operational potential, I've done a lot of work on small details and hints at stuff rather than, you know, massive stations, because obviously that's not going to work for this layout. So, got 2 different bridge mouths here, 2 different tunnel mouths rather, built from different materials. That's to mainly get people thinking, why are they different? They're obviously at different angles because it's more interesting for a viewer of the layout, but this one's obviously a larger sandstone, this one's a newer red brick. This is maybe a new bridge for a replacement, or maybe it's a new bridge because the line originally stopped here and got extended. Why did it get extended? It clearly doesn't have much money. Look at how scruffy its permanent way yard is. There's dumped ballast at the end. There's ballast that's clearly going to be used, stored in an old standard gauge chaldron, and older items of rolling stock from the railway itself. There's a grounded van body here that's clearly used for storage of some kind, but there's rust coming through on the roof and there's rust coming through on the sides. Obviously, I've weathered that grounded body with the idea that it's going to be here in mind, so the rust is coming through. Clearly shows that it's not loved, it's not had much maintenance, if any, in its life, but it's clearly being used for something. The upturned cart, well, why has that been upturned? Does it not run anymore? What's the problem with it? That sort of thing. It just hints at more than just, if this was just a nice clean permanent way siding. These rusted rails, where did they come from? What did they do? That sort of thing. It just hints a little bit more, it asks more questions than it answers. And I think on a layout like this, which ultimately is very small, it's 60 centimetres by 20 centimetres, there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of the hinting at stuff rather than just the operational potential, because I've not got 12 platforms to run trains in and out of. Building on that, I've got 2 different broken trees. Were they broken by man? Were they felled by man? Or did nature make them fall over? That one there maybe, because it's not on enough of a embankment, maybe that fell because it didn't have strong roots. But why was this one cut down? That seems like a good place for a tree. Truthfully, it's because I needed it to fit in this box. But, you know, it adds a little bit more interest to the layout. Speaking of interest, if I rotate the layout round, you can see that I've cut the back scene away here. Again, makes it a little bit different between the two sides, makes the layout feel less boxed in, but also means that we've got a vantage point for looking down here and down at what I call the kink, because the track comes along here and it kinks in a little bit after the point, and out again and round again. It just means that the track's not running parallel with the outside of the board. It's something I've wanted to try for ages, and this was the perfect chance to try it. The kink just means the trains look like they're travelling a little bit more, and a bit more of a natural scene than if it was just running parallel with the board the whole time. We've got our point levers down here connected up with point rodding to the point itself. Now, there is two. I'm not sure how well it'll come up on camera because they're the yellow and a red one. Basically, one of these is meant to represent a locking bar that has to be unlocked before the point can be thrown. Again, this whole thing's been rusted. The rust colour sort of blends in with the autumnal tones of the back scene, which is obviously the cutting itself. These have been dry brushed to sort of make them fit a lot better together, because there's a lot of tonal variation between the Woodland Scenics pack that I've used. There's a bit of green in here just to be different, and the coconut wire, the coconut hair, so it doesn't come up so well on camera, but I've dry brushed this with a couple of different tones of light orange, white and browns, just to sort of blend things together. I'm going to mix all those tones up to create one tone just to blend everything in once more when I get the chance, but I've not really had the chance to do that. And somewhere in the yard I would quite like to have some figures, not many, just one or two, just posing around as if they're inspecting the ballast or something like that. Just there's a little bit of interest, and should this layout ever get exhibited, I'll build a little spot sheet, you know, can you spot the 3 people, the 2 trees, that sort of stuff, solely because I think that sort of stuff is really important for making small layouts like this interesting to children. And also, I've just got really fond memories of doing that when I was a kid at exhibitions, so if I could repay that into the world, that'd be very nice. Inside the tunnel mouths, I bricked them up using the brick tones that I built the rest of the tunnel mouths out of. Again, just a bit of visual interest, and it means the layout isn't just running into the foam board back scenes. Obviously, they do eventually stop, but you have to sort of properly go hunting for them that way. Speaking of the back scene, again, I built this layout with half an eye on exhibiting it because I saw a layout at the NEC that was basically a bigger version of this, and I really enjoyed seeing it, so I thought maybe I could build one. Also, it'd be really small and easy to have at an exhibition, and wouldn't take up much space. So anyway, you can see here in the back scene, I've cut parts away just so I can get my grubby little mitts in and swap the trains round should I want to do that. Yeah, everything's been painted on the back. The foam board back scenes have been painted and stuff like that. The skips represent the longest rake that I can run on this layout. Obviously, this isn't a main line, so the whole point is that it runs slowly, and the issue is that the main form of traction, because I dropped this about 18 months ago, the main form of traction is this old Joef HOE loco, and to be honest, it's rapid, it's really quick. However, on this layout it's quite slow because it fights its way around the curve, which is really, really tight. I didn't use a hand bending tool for this. I used basically line of sight, and it meant that it runs across it, but it sort of fights its way through some of it, which slows it down. And also slowing it down are these skips. I've got another 4 that are loaded, so they're heavy as well. And basically these have been weathered, so there's a bit of resistance to them, and because the rake is quite long, it fights its way round the curve with them, and basically by the time the last wagon is off the curve, it's onto part of the kink, across the point, and back into the tunnel mouth again. So it doesn't actually get a chance to speed up and go really quick. It runs at really nice prototypical speeds. It's fun that way. I'd like to get a Bachmann Quarry Hunslet, but unfortunately I don't have the budget for it at the moment. So I've got an old System 90 controller that currently is powering the layout, using these wires here. Handily, they went through this little mounting hole for the shelf. This whole thing is built on a shelf baseboard. So, to conclude, does this layout do what I wanted it to do? Well, I wanted a 009 roundy. It would have been nice if I could run some of my, well, this 6-wheel diesel, but unfortunately I can't. It's not realistic. However, I do actually have a roundy that I can run this 009 loco on, and that's really quite cool, especially in the fact that this is only 1 metre long by 20 centimetres. I don't have any track building tools, so this was certainly an interesting challenge for me to do, and I had fun building it. As the project went along, I started to think what would make it more interesting, and that's why I settled on doing it as a permanent waste siding of the mid-potteries, just because it's different to what else I've seen in 009. Most 009 layouts are of nice big preserved railways, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some of the layouts are spectacular, but I wanted something different, and I think that this layout does that. The autumnal tones also help that, but to be honest, that was more accident than intentional because they were cheap in Hobbycraft. But so the layout does what it wanted with that. I've got a roundy that's interesting, a bit different. As I got through building the layout, I was thinking maybe this would be an interesting exhibition layout, and if you think that as well, I'll leave my RM web and my Instagram in the comment section below, and we can maybe work out, if you'd be interested in having this layout at your exhibition, we can maybe work that out via that. But for me, this layout does exactly what I want it to do. I built it for a purpose, and it's done that purpose, which is great. It's not finished. I'd like to touch in parts of the back scene, if this ever was to go out on the exhibition circuit. That'd be tidying up, as in like the top bits where the white's showing. I'm sure you'll have seen that in the video. And also, I'd like to add some figures into the yard and things like that, and do that spot sheet. But apart from that, I'm really quite impressed with this layout, and it's done what I wanted it to. And I'll catch you in the next one. No idea when it'll be and what it'll be on. Laters.